Tonight, we're focusing on parenting to support our teens. As I mentioned, this is one of my favorite discussions because we all walk away with really practical and empowering ways to support teens in our lives in navigating what we all know can be pretty challenging adolescence. I'm so excited to introduce our first speaker. I am going to hand it over to our first speaker, Trina Rymland, who will introduce herself and begin her presentation.
Thank you, Molly. I'm so excited to be here tonight. I want to reiterate the no judgment zone. I think that's so important. So let's keep that in mind no matter what it is we hear. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen because that's where all my notes are, and that's where I will get started. So, all right, I hope. Let's see right here. There we go. Okay. Thumbs up. Everybody's good. We see that. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So again, hello. I am so happy to be here speaking with you tonight. Thank you again, Molly, for that warm welcome. And I want to thank Ada for being our teen representative tonight. I think that peer-to-peer information is so important. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Let me give you a little more information about myself. My name is Trina Rymland. First and foremost, I am a mom of two amazing human beings. I studied communication and early childhood education in college, and I'm a former credentialed Montessori educator, working over 25 years in classrooms of various age levels. And I am the founder of Parenting on Purpose, taking my years of education experience to a more personal level, helping parents find connection through communication and build confidence as parents, right? You can find me at parentcoachtrina.com. So tonight we're going to talk about parenting to support our teens, specifically about things we can do in our parenting that can help our relationship with our teens to ultimately make better decisions about substance use and hopefully better decisions in general. So we're going to jump right in here. So let's start with a quick overview or review for some of you of the psychological development of the brain. As humans, the brain develops and matures back to front, okay? Some people say bottom to top, it's the same. The back of the brain, often referred to as the reptilian brain, controls all of our primal instincts, right? And automatic responses like breathing and reflexes. This part of the brain is fully developed at birth. The midbrain, which houses the limbic system, is the next to mature. The midbrain handles motor functions and memories and emotions. Okay. This part of the brain becomes fully developed between the ages of 10 and 13. Now, the front of our brain, the neocortex, responsible for logic and thinking and reasoning, is the last part of the brain to mature, right? And at the very front of the brain is the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex handles a wide range of functions known as executive functions. You've probably heard of these before. Things like planning, prioritizing and organizing, stress regulation, ability to be flexible, and cause and effect are all executive functioning skills, and these are just a few. Okay, so what age does this front part of the brain fully mature? Does anybody want to have a guess? You can pop it into the chat if you think you know. Okay. Never. Yeah. Okay. So yes, mid to late 20s. And now research, it says, research says that maybe not until the age of 30, okay? Especially if someone has ADHD, is neurodiverse, or maybe experienced some sort of childhood trauma. Any of these things can cause a delay in that development of the brain, okay? So your brain is like a muscle, but it's like a muscle in the way that the parts you use most get stronger, okay? More synaptic connections are built in those areas. By the time adolescence rolls around, age 13 or 14, what parts have been utilized the most in the teen brain? Well, the reptilian brain, right? Automatic responses, which is also where our fight or flight response is located, and the limbic system, processing emotion, are the two fully mature parts of the brain at adolescence. So basically, what are our teens? They're highly instinctual bundles of emotion with little access to reason at the front of the brain. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about dysregulation. Okay. When you feel safe and relaxed, it can be in a moment of joy or of calm. Your nervous system is considered regulated. If you experience stress, your nervous system can become dysregulated. So even as adults, if your nervous system is dysregulated, it actually limits your ability to access the front part of your brain and those executive functioning skills, right? Depending on the level of dysregulation, this can even affect your sensory systems, taking them temporarily offline. And the first system to be affected, does anybody have a guess? Pop it into the chat if you think you know. Let's see. Okay, the first sensory system to be affected by dysregulation, hearing, right? Doesn't this make sense? That sometimes your kids hear you and respond, and sometimes they just don't. Well, it may be because they actually can't hear you. It's easy to detect dysregulation when someone is screaming or out of control, but dysregulation can also cause shutdown or withdrawal, which makes it a little harder to recognize. Okay, so stress in our bodies keeps us in the lower part of our brain or the back part of our brain, which is why we can become so easily triggered. Something as simple as being tired, hungry, feeling bad about work, school, friends, these things can accumulate throughout the day and put us in a fragile state. With all that's going on in a teen's life and their brain, they can very easily slip into dysregulation. So it's not as if teens have no prefrontal cortex. It's simply underdeveloped, and chances are they are falling into dysregulation on a daily basis. So going back to the idea of what parts of your brain that you use get stronger. So emotions and fight or flight response come very easily to our teens. Good judgment and impulse control, not so much. So recognizing and remembering that your teen can become easily dysregulated is going to be super helpful. And we'll talk more about that a little later. Sometimes it's really helpful for us as parents to reframe our thoughts in order to shift the paradigm of how we think about our children. I've heard this quote in different variations, but it's basically this. Your kid is not giving you a hard time. They are having a hard time. Okay. This phrase reminds us that when a child is acting out or being difficult, It's often because they are struggling with emotions that they don't know how to express. It's not that they are intentionally trying to annoy or upset their parents, okay? I think this is so important, I want to say it again. Your kid is not giving you a hard time. Most likely they're having a hard time. So with all the changes happening to their bodies and their brains, teens' emotions can often be in flux, and most likely causing them a great deal of inner turmoil. And so what you want to do is change your belief about your child in those moments so that you can find compassion and respond instead of reacting with anger. Okay. So when my kids were young, I wrote this on a Post-it note, and I wrote it several times, and I had one in my bedroom, I had one in my office, I had one in my kitchen. You get the idea, right? The more you can remind yourself of this, the more likely you can respond with compassion. Okay. They still need us. When our kids are little, they look to us as their safe haven. We fulfill their needs like food, shelter, and their emotional needs, right? Adolescence is also the stage of development where teens will begin to transfer some of that emotional support they normally get from their parents to their peers. And we, the parents, transition from safe haven to more of a secure base for them to venture away from and return back to, right? So the act of preferring friends to parents is all part of the normal developmental process. They aren't trying to be mean when they shut you out. And as much as it may seem that they don't need us, it's just not true. In fact, 2 different studies found that in times of deep distress, when our teens are dealing with the really big stuff, they still prefer their parents to their peers. They go to their parents for comfort and assurance because they value what you have to say. What they don't want is for us to try to change or fix their problems. They want us to show up calmly and caringly, listen to their perspective, and show empathy for what they're feeling. Another reminder of a way to reframe your thoughts is this acronym that's been used in therapy, but I think it's even more applicable to parenting. Q-tip. Quit taking it personally. So much of the teen years are about pushing limits, figuring out who we are as individuals, separating from our parents, right? If we as the adults can really understand, believe, and remember that in those crucial moments when they are at their worst, they are just being normal teenagers. So we should be able to understand that it's not about us. It's teens doing exactly what they're supposed to do. I know it's hard, but if you can manage this, it can be a game changer. Okay, so what are some of the reasons that teens might engage in substance use? Well, some say boredom, some say curiosity, normal teenage rebellion, peer pressure, right? To feel grown up or fit in. A very young kid's brain is wired for 2 things: to get their needs met, and the other one is F-U-N, fun, right? That's what they're motivated by. So once they become teenagers, that shifts. And now they're motivated by, am I going to be okay, right? And they still rely on us as their parents to confirm this. And also, where do I belong? Belonging is huge for teenagers, okay? Also, role modeling. It's so important for us to reflect on what we're modeling in our own habits, even how we talk about our teenage experiences, right? And if what we do, how we behave, and what we say or expect from our kids don't align, it can cause a lot of confusion. And a confused brain can't make good decisions. Or it might be that they simply perceive very little risk in the consequences of substance use. Lack of education can be very detrimental, yet easily fixable. And the fact that you're here tonight means that you're already addressing this. Marin Healthy Use Partnerships has so many resources. If you haven't already checked out their website, I would definitely do that. So, as parents, we should not shy away from having open conversations with our kids about difficult topics. And truth be told, it should be happening early and often, right? These conversations need to be part of our normal talk. They're never just a one and done. Like, you can't check that box and be done with it, right? It's a continual conversation that changes as our kids get older. I think some parents can be under the impression that if the kids aren't talking about it yet, then they shouldn't bring it up, right? They don't want to inadvertently plant ideas that aren't there yet. But I will share that my experience as a parent and as a coach has been the parents who wait to have the talk usually miss a really good opportunity. If it hasn't been a normal part of the family conversation, by the time they're teenagers, they're often too embarrassed or scared to talk about it with their parents. And instead, they'll rely on information from their peers. So don't be afraid to bring it up and to ask your kids questions. All right, so what can we do to keep our kids safe? Clearly, it seems education is pretty important. First, we need to educate ourselves about what substances are available to them, what do kids call certain things, like what's the slang these days, right? The more knowledgeable we show up to our kids, the more validity our words hold. And educate our kids not only about products or consequences to their health, but how you feel about substance use. Communicate your family values and be explicit. Talk about it with your kids, right? Kids may not really know or understand if you don't speak frankly about how you feel or what your expectations are around substance use. Another thing, be involved in your kid's life, right? I think once our kids get to be teenagers, it's often a time that we think, oh, well, I can get more involved in my work, or I can, it can be more about me now. Even though they seem so self-sufficient and they want and need more independence, stay interested, available, and present, right? They still need us and we still have influence. And I know this is a tricky balance because the last thing a teen wants is for you to try to fix or control them. But if you can let them know with your actions and your words every day that you're here if they need you and that you love them, that is still so very important. So if I had to choose just one thing that parents could do that would help keep their kids safe, without a doubt, I would say prioritize connection, right? But what is connection? Well, connection is more than just your relationship. It has to do with the quality of your relationship and your communication. It's a sense of closeness, a feeling of emotional bonding where the people in the relationship feel safe to openly express themselves. They feel seen and valued and accepted for who they authentically are. As parents, we have to parent the child we have and not try to mold them into the child that we imagined. So you really have to see who your child is and accept them unconditionally. That does not mean that you accept all of their behaviors. That's what boundaries are for. In my coaching practice, connection is one of the most prevalent issues I help parents with. No matter what age, connection has to be more important to you than almost anything else, right? More important than picking up the toys, more important than material possessions, right? That shirt your teen borrowed that now has a stain, you can let that go, right? More important than the grades. If they're struggling, let's get curious about why they aren't doing well and be their partner in figuring out what they need. So basically, connection needs to be more important than compliance. If you can establish connection with your child, they will be much more trusting, more willing to listen, and ironically, compliance will end up being so much more accessible in your relationship. Connection fosters safety, and safety fosters self-esteem. And self-esteem is very important in helping kids make better decisions. Now, having connection doesn't mean that everything will be sunshine and rainbows. You're still parenting a human with free will. You need to anticipate that there will be backtalk. There will be defiance and lots of mistakes. But mistakes are how we learn. Mistakes don't necessarily need punishment. Mistakes often have a built-in natural consequence that demonstrates that their choice wasn't so good after all, right? That should be sufficient. And if it's not, maybe they need some skill building, right? Mistakes are not a character problem. They are a process problem. And we can always fix the process. So it's not possible to change another human being, even your child. They are their own person, come to earth through you to have their own experience. The only person we as individuals, as parents, have control over is ourselves. So what you can control is how you show up to your child and how you respond to them, right? These two things will be critical in building a solid connection with them. So I guess the question now is, how do we create connection? Hopefully you have a fairly connected relationship already, because connection starts at birth. But connection can certainly become fragmented through the teenage years. So it's something that we need to keep nurturing. If you feel you're lacking connection in your relationship, you can always change directions. It could start tonight, right after you get off this call. Maybe you say to your kid, I realized tonight that I should have been communicating differently with you, right? But remember, whenever there's a change in your relationship, your child may resist because unfamiliar feels unsafe. I wouldn't recommend trying to create connection in one conversation. Give it time and don't give up, because your kids are too important to give up on. So the next section of this presentation is going to focus on specific strategies for building connection through communication. These strategies are applicable to many situations, all ages of kids, and can help you show up in a way that will foster that connection. Okay. This slide makes me want to breathe. Learn self-regulation. Self-regulation is the ability to recognize when you're being triggered and taking steps to calm yourself before you react. So when a parent becomes dysregulated by their dysregulated child's behavior and tries to engage with them while they're both dysregulated, there is a 100% chance of an escalation and a 0% chance of a positive solution. When you're engaged in an escalation of any kind, your brain your fight or flight response sends out the same chemicals through your body as it would if you were being attacked by a bear, right? Same thing. Your brain and your body do not know the difference. And this is true for teens and adults. Okay. So what needs to happen first is for you to self-regulate. And how do you do that, right? So here's a couple of steps we can take. Number one, pause and breathe. One of the most effective ways to self-regulate is by taking a moment to pause, breathe deeply with a slow exhale, right? When you feel triggered and your body goes into that fight or flight response, try taking a few deep breaths to relieve that tension. This helps calm you down and gives you space to respond thoughtfully instead of impulsively. Right? 2, label your emotions. This sounds simple, but being able to name what you're feeling can reduce the intensity of your emotions. For example, saying to yourself, I'm feeling so frustrated, right? Or, wow, I'm feeling really anxious. This helps separate you from your emotions, and it actually makes them more manageable. It gives you more control over how you respond because you're no longer just reacting, you're now observing and trying to understand, right? Create grounding techniques. Grounding techniques can help you stay present when you're feeling overwhelmed. This could be as simple as focusing on your senses, like noticing 5 things that you can see or touch or hear, right? Or it could be taking one step in any direction. Motion changes emotion. Or even just remembering that you are safe and that you can handle this, right? Little self-affirmations, little mantras that you can use. Techniques like these help shift your attention away from the trigger and bring you back to the present moment, allowing you to calm your mind and regain access to your higher brain. Choose the right time and place. Timing matters when discussing important issues or trying to connect. So find a quiet moment. Choose when your teens are not busy or stressed. So the night before a big test might not be the right time to engage. Avoid distractions. Ensure the environment is free from distractions, like putting your phones away, turning off the TV. Casual settings, right? Taking a walk, a ride in the car, talking during the family meal. These can all encourage talking, right? Actually setting up an activity together that you both like to do, and then the important discussion can happen around the activity and give you something to do if there are awkward pauses, right? All of these things are really helpful. Creating a comfortable environment helps both parties feel more relaxed and can help foster dialogue, encouraging open and honest conversations. Communicate calmly and clearly. When sharing thoughts or feelings, clarity is vital. Stating your thoughts plays a significant role in positive emotional development. Use I statements. Instead of saying, well, you never listen, right? Try, I feel unheard when I talk about my concerns. Stay calm, right? This goes back to that self-regulation piece. Control your emotions and your tone of voice to avoid escalating tensions. Take deep breaths if you feel overwhelmed, right? Be specific when you can. Clearly state your thoughts without vague language. For example, instead of just saying, Well, I'm angry. Explain, I'm angry because I feel you're not listening to me. Right? Clear communication fosters trust and reduces misunderstandings. Listen actively. Communication is a two-way street. Active listening plays a significant role in effective communication. Show interest, right? Nod, maintain eye contact, okay? But only if your teen feels comfortable with this. Sometimes teens don't want to look you in the eye, and you have to notice that about your teen, right? But show you're engaged with your body and your words, and show that you care about what your child is saying. Don't interrupt. Allow your teens to finish their thoughts before responding. Ask questions, right? If you don't understand something, ask for clarification. Lead with real curiosity. Instead of saying, well, what does that mean? Right? Maybe you can try, can you tell me more about that? By listening actively, you demonstrate respect for their opinions and you encourage them to do the same. Be honest about your feelings. Honesty strengthens relationships. Share your vulnerabilities. It's okay to express when you feel anxious, sad, or overwhelmed. Don't share so much that you burden your child with your worries, but it's okay to express emotions. By sharing what you feel, you help your teen to understand your perspective, and it makes you more relatable. Avoid overgeneralizations. Instead of saying, you never trust me, try, I feel like you don't trust my judgment in this situation. Use examples when you can. Provide specific instances to illustrate your feelings, right? When you were late last week, I wasn't mad. I was worried about you. Honest communication helps your kids connect with your experiences. Stay open to feedback, right? This one's really hard. Receiving feedback can be challenging, especially from our kids, but it's essential for growth. Keep an open mind when you can. Understand that your teens may have a different perspective, right? Those humans coming here to have their own experience. Listen to their feedback without getting defensive. Ask for their perspective. Encourage your teen to share their thoughts. This shows that you value their input and fosters collaboration. Reflect and adapt, probably the most important. Use the feedback you receive to reflect on your communication style and adapt as necessary, right? If you say something and it didn't work, let's not say that again, right? Demonstrating that you're willing to improve communication and make changes goes a long way in showing your teen that you care and that they are valued. Okay, and connection, rupture, and repair. To be human is to be fallible, right? That no judgment zone. We're bound to mess this up. It's not possible to stay calm and regulated all the time. Relationships are a constant cycle of moments of connection or safety with inevitable ruptures. And to move forward, we need to repair. So we have to get really good at the repair, right? So ruptures are an opportunity. If we can think of ruptures of fights as normal and that they create an opportunity to reconnect, then they don't have to hold the same heaviness or guilt that we usually give them. Forgive yourself first. You need to create safety in your own nervous system. So forgive yourself, right? In order to offer the most authentic repair that you can to your child. Once you feel safe, that will be more successful, right? And then make your repair. As soon as you're calm, make the attempt to reconnect and repair the rupture. Now, if your teen is not ready, let them know your intentions and give them space. Again, demonstrating that you're willing to take responsibility and that you want to reconnect will help foster the repair. And it's great role modeling for them. Okay, once the time is right and you and your child are both regulated and calm and feeling safe, I'd like to offer you these steps to help ensure a successful repair. So number one is connect. And that's just the short-term connect. You want to maybe offer them a compliment. Maybe you want to just comment on something that they're doing, right? Connect in a way that you know your child will respond positively to you. Then you ask for consent. You know, I feel really bad about our fight. I feel really bad about it. Is this a good time to talk about it? Would you like to do that now? Right? If they're ready, then you can say, I can imagine that you're feeling blank, right? I can imagine that you're feeling really mad because I insert the emotion, whatever it is that happened during your fight, right? Because I raised my voice, right? I regret how I lost control because it caused you to withdraw. See? In the future, I'll do my best to have better control of my emotions, right? For now, how can I support you? What can I do for you right now, right? And notice we're not asking for forgiveness. Your child gets to take their time and process their feelings and thoughts. Your goal is to make sure that your child feels safe. Your modeling of patience and self-accountability is how you get there. I can't emphasize enough how important connection is. We don't have control over our teens, but we have control over how we show up as their parents. So we're going to do a quick review of what we talked about tonight, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next part of our discussion. Teen brains are not fully developed. They still need us, and we still have influence. They need to know the effects of substances on their bodies and brains, and how you feel about substance use. The best defense a parent has is connection. Connection includes how you show up and how you communicate. Strategies for connection: learn to self-regulate, choose the right time and place, communicate calmly and clearly, listen actively, be honest about your feelings, stay open to feedback, connect, rupture, and repair. And boy, I feel like I've been talking a lot. That's the end of the portion for me. And I'm sure I'll come back to you for the question and answer.
Thank you so much, Trina. I was both monitoring the chat and also jotting down notes of all the questions. We got incredible questions. I want to thank everyone who sent something in the chat. I've been making notes of them. I think maybe other MHIP folks have as well. So we are compiling them, we're holding on to them, and we'll share them with Trina and with our youth speaker at the end of our youth speakers presentation, which will be coming up next. So thank you again, Trina. That was just incredible. And I think a lot of people, I see a comment that I just wanted to share here. Greg shared, I wish I had these insights 20 years ago. So thank you so much for everything you shared with us tonight. So what I would like to do now is actually hand it over to our incredible youth speaker, Ada. Ada Perlson is a junior at Tam High School. And with that, I will hand it over to Ada to share your perspective and your work.
Hi everyone. Trina, that was an amazing presentation. Um, I'm a junior at TAM and also a student ambassador for Raising the Bar. Last summer, I was lucky enough to be a Raising the Bar intern, and now I'm taking things a step further by working with my program coordinator, Lisa, who is on Zoom here tonight, to bring the conversation about parent modeling to PTA boards at Mill Valley schools, including Park School, Tam Valley, Edna, Old Mill, and Mill Valley Middle. So, if you haven't heard of Raising the Bar before, I'll just give a brief explanation. Raising the Bar started in Ross Valley in 2017 as a countywide initiative with one major goal to promote healthy modeling and shift social norms around alcohol and other substances at youth-centered events. And what does this mean? Well, basically, we want to help parents understand how their behaviors influence their kids, even in ways they might not even realize. I wanted to get involved in Raising the Bar because, like most teens, I see parental modeling in action every single day. Whether it's my own parents, my friends' parents, or just what I observe in the world around me, it's clear that kids pick up on everything. A lot of my friends share stories about what they see at home, some funny, some frustrating, and some that really make us think. One of the most common examples is if a parent says, like, oh, I'm so stressed, and then they go and immediately pour a glass of wine to fix it just in front of their kids. And um, we're not trying to prevent parents from drinking or cancel happy hour or anything, but the point is just to be mindful about your actions and what they're teaching us. And if kids constantly see stress and alcohol linked together, it creates a message and it can make teens think, oh, this is how adults handle tough emotions. Parents really like to say, do as I say, not as I do, but that's not exactly how it works. Kids follow what they see way more than what they hear. If a parent tells their teen, drinking at your age is dangerous, but then jokes about how they need a drink every single night, that can send two very different messages. Now, don't get me wrong, parents aren't expected to be perfect, but what really makes a difference is how parents can handle those moments. There's a big secret from the teen perspective. The way parents talk to us matters just as much as what they say. If there's one thing that immediately makes a teen shut down, it's feeling like we're being talked at instead of talked with. I love Trina's presentation because she really emphasizes the importance of how we create connections. If parents want to have meaningful conversations with their kids, especially about big topics such as substance use, the key is calm, open, and judgment-free communication. At the end of the day, parents have more influence than they probably realize. Even if it seems like we're ignoring you, we're actually watching everything. Parents set the first example of what being an adult looks like, and that's a huge deal. So if there's one message I wanted to get across, it's this. Your kids are really paying attention, more than what you might think, more than what we even realize ourselves. And trust me, we really do look up to you, even when we pretend not to. Now, I'd like to move over and read you an op-ed that I wrote while I was a intern last summer, and it was also posted on the Marin Healthy Youth Partnerships blog with 5,000 followers, so maybe one of you have read it. So it's called It is Never Too Late to Talk About Substance Use in Youth. As children, we are always taking in new information. We attempt to follow what our parents do and try to be like them. For example, if a kid sees their parent exercising, they might begin to show interest in doing so. My dad loves to play golf, so I often go to the course to play with him. Parental influence is important in many ways, including substance use. It is important for parents to be intentional about the behaviors they are modeling around their own substance use. Is it something they want their kids to follow? Have open and honest communication about substances and how they can affect your lifestyle. I have had effective conversations with my parents about substance use. They have shared theirs and others' experiences with me and lessons learned. My parents encourage me to ask questions, share my thoughts, and fully understand all of the consequences of my actions. My parents make it very clear that they are here for my support and guidance, rather than to try to dictate my every move. By being open-minded and understanding, they have created a space for me to learn about substance responsibility, which will impact choices I make throughout my life, and hopefully make better ones. While Marin County is rated the #1 healthiest county in California, it has one major exception: underage substance use. According to the latest California Kids Healthy Survey, 39% of 11th graders in Marin County reported alcohol use in the past month, surpassing the state average of 29%. Within the Tam Union School District, this figure rises to 47%. Something is going on in Marin that isn't going on in other communities. From the perspective of a young person growing up in Marin, I think the origin of this problem has to do with parental influence. In addition to modeling, having meaningful discussions about the dangers and consequences of substance use can demystify the topic for children and adolescents. If parents create a supportive environment when having conversations like these, children have the information and tools to make better decisions. Even though it might not seem like it, kids hear their parents' concerns, which is why it is vital for them to have conversations about the use of alcohol and other various drugs. If parents are understanding rather than judgy, their kid is more likely to respect their opinions. It is never too late to talk with your kids openly about substance use. Why should we pay attention to the topic of drugs and alcohol? Approximately 3,300 kids as young as 12 experiment with marijuana for the first time each day. Additionally, almost 5 out of 10 children as young as 12 use prescription painkillers for non-medical reasons. Ignoring the issue is making the crisis worse. When it comes to alcohol and other substances, children don't necessarily have all the information. Parental silence on the dangers of underage alcohol use and drugs may lead to children believing that alcohol and other substances are harmless. Parents having a talk with their children enables them to establish clear expectations on alcohol and other substances. Parents play a critical role in educating and setting boundaries for substance use among their children. Open, honest, and supportive discussions about the effects of substance use can give kids the information to make better decisions. By taking action now through healthy modeling and meaningful conversations, parents can significantly influence their children's choices and impact their futures with substances. It is never too late. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Ada. That was incredible. I saw Lisa just beaming with pride, and I think I know Melissa was smiling. I'm sure Kelsey was as well. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to also thank Kelsey. Kelsey dropped a link to Ada's blog. So in case you want to take it back with you and read it another time, or maybe 4 more times, it is available to you in the chat. Ada, you've gotten a You Rock, an amazing talk. Thank you. So I just want to thank you again, Ada. Thank Trina. We had incredible speakers. I was not lying to you. This was one of my favorite chats we've had. And we got incredible questions that I would love to kind of pose to both of you as we're kicking off the Q&A portion of our discussion. If you have other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I've been making notes and making sure we get all of the questions that are shared answered in this time. So, Trina, I had a couple questions for you that came up in your presentation, and I think they will add to kind of the wealth of information and easy to implement tips that you gave us. Some of these are a little more specific in terms of situations that some parents and caregivers are finding themselves in. One really interesting question that I think came up and maybe is applicable to a lot of parents here is, what do you suggest someone says to their teen about expectations of them when it comes to substance use, when they do maybe see parents, I was going to say us, parents/us, maybe having a glass of wine with friends. There was kind of a question or concern of like, I don't want to come off looking hypocritical, but how do you have that conversation with the teen around those expectations?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So it's interesting. a friend of mine would always tell her kids, I am over 21 and I pay the rent. So this is something that adults can do, right? And when you're an adult, you can do it as well, right? So just letting them know and being not being condescending, but there are things that are appropriate for certain ages. And this is one of those, right? But also I think being mindful about how you consume, right? You don't want to have 6 glasses of wine at dinner and then behave in a way that demonstrates a behavior you don't want your teens to emulate, right? And you also want to be careful about how you talk about it, right? If you say, oh my God, I've had such a stressful day, I need a drink, right? Then it becomes a crutch. It becomes something that you need, right? But if you come home and you're having a glass of wine while you're making some spaghetti sauce and you behave in a way that is not atypical to how you normally behave, then that sends a message that, again, this is something that an adult might do. And when you get to be an adult, you can have a glass of wine, right? So I think just being mindful about how we talk about it. And it's not a switch, it's a dial, right? So there are levels of appropriateness, and we need to be mindful about those.
Thank you, Trina. And I know, Ada, not to put you on the spot, but I know in your blog, I remember you saying, sometimes we experience parents to say, or, do as I say, not as I do as I say, not as I do. For a second, I was like, did I get that wrong? Anyway, I wanted to ask you, Ada, given what Trina just shared of like how she might suggest, parents communicate that, I just wanted to ask maybe what your thoughts were with some of Trina's responses, or if you have other suggestions as well.
Yeah, I really agree with Trina, and I think that if you just have a glass of wine with your friends, or as Trina was saying, like while you're cooking dinner and you're still, behaving and not really talking about alcohol as a way to like escape your problems or um, like how you treat a stressful day, and just maybe having one glass of wine at dinner or something in front of your kids. I think that's a way of not being hypocritical because you are an adult and it is legal for you to drink. So,
Thank you, Ada. Another question I had, or we received, Trina, maybe if you can also speak to we're thinking a little bit about like some sentence starters. You gave us such incredible ways to initiate conversations. I loved that script on how to repair after a rupture. I was like furiously writing it down for myself. But I wanted to ask some specific questions that came in around situations where if a parent has tried to have these conversations just more broadly and just hasn't felt like it's been successful. Do you have any kind of recommendations for how to initiate another conversation, even if it is sentence starters, or how do you kind of like begin to rebuild that connection? Yeah.
Yeah, again, with all the tips, I think probably the most important thing is don't get discouraged, right? Observe and try to think about what your child really likes and maybe engage with them in that way, right? Maybe you know that they like a particular music artist. Maybe you know that they like a particular video game, right? I think parenting is the hardest job in the world. You can educate yourself about that and then just kind of, drop a little truth bomb or a little fact. Oh, you know what I heard today? I heard that, what is it now? Mario Brothers is coming out with a new version, or, you know, whatever it is that they're Roblox or Mind something, Minecraft, that's it, right? If there's something that they're into, look into that. Put a little bit of time into whatever they're interested in. If you don't know what they're interested in, authentically ask. Lead with an authentic curiosity, right? Often I think parents want to come over as the authority because they don't want to appear like they don't know what they're doing, but it's really not relatable. A pure curiosity is always going to be your best bet. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I had a follow-up actually. I'm just curious, when you're asking, when you're initiating a conversation around something that your teen is interested in, and you want to build a connection that way, are you recommending that that's a way to kind of enter into that conversation about substances and the ways that you as a parent might feel about substances? I think a question that was kind of coming up as a follow-up to this first question was like, how do we actually kind of broach the subject of substances if we're trying to kind of give it a second chance or a second try if it's
Right.
been unsuccessful in the past?
So there's a lot of things here that we still like. Is your child already trying substances, or are you trying to keep them from, there's a lot of stuff that, but again, I would say staying involved, right? Trying to keep that connection. If you've had a conversation and they didn't want to talk about it, I might just come back and say, I tried to talk to you about this before, and I noticed you didn't want to talk about it, but it's so important to me. I think we really need to give it another try. Let's go grab a milkshake, right? Give them something that they want. Like they might not want to hang out with you. Let's go get a milkshake. I could always tempt my kids with boba tea. So let's go get a boba tea. And then in the car, we might start talking about things. But again, I just think that true authenticity and that desire, if you can relay that to your child and then be patient, right? Give them, try to connect with them in little opportunities. You don't want to suffocate them, but talk to them, connect with them. And then when the time is right, what do you think about this? Are there any kids in your school that are drinking these days? Curiosity, authenticity. I think that's your best bet.
Thank you so much, Trina. I didn't mean to keep pushing at you, but I think
That's okay.
some of the questions I have been kind of making a note of are pretty specific in terms of like, what are some ways we can even just start a sentence, start a conversation, because it can be challenging, as as kind of, I think everybody in this Zoom room can agree. These
And
are
each family is going to be different, right? We're all going to have our own tolerances and our own desires about what we think is appropriate. So
Yeah, thank you. Um, Another question that came up is, I would be curious what your thoughts are, Trina, around, is it okay to tell your child if you are feeling triggered or activated by something that they said or did? Or would you recommend you maybe, take a step back and come back to that conversation? Like, how might you kind of communicate your own feelings or a reaction in a situation like that?
there's lots of different options. Sometimes if your child is being disrespectful, I might say, I'd like to try that again, right? Other times I might say, I'm going to go wash my hands and I'd love to talk about that in a minute. No one's ever going to stop you from going to the bathroom. What you don't want to do is, I can't deal with you, and walk away, right? Because that feels like abandonment. So what you can make it clear. I think it's okay to say, that's really triggering me right now. I might need a minute to go calm down. Can we hold that and come back to it? I think that's perfectly appropriate. So
Thank you so much, Trina. And I have to obviously name that as the parent, you are only 50% of that conversation. And so, Ada, that may be happening for you. And again, not to put you on the spot or make you, or force you into answering a question, but I'm just curious kind of what your thoughts are in that type of situation, because there may be scenarios where you as the young person are also feeling triggered or activated. And so do you have any thoughts on what you might do as a young person in that scenario, but at the same time, what you might even suggest to a parent, like what you would hope your parent might do in that situation as well?
Yeah, so I think in like having conversations like these, the last thing you want it like to be would be an interrogation. And so if you're trying to, I don't know, find out if your kid has been using substances, you don't want to make it seem like it's really high stress or like they've done something wrong. And I really think that Trina's, when she was talking about how like, you need to lead with curiosity, I really think that is a great way to do it. And yeah, and if the parent maybe is triggered, I think you could like table the conversation for another time and maybe let the kid think about it, or because if you're being put on the spot, maybe you might feel like a parent is trying to blame you of something. Um, and yeah, maybe just let the kid be able to think about it before they respond. And then you could have the conversation like another time or something.
Thank you so much, Ada. It's really interesting when, it's very similar sentiment on both sides. And so I think it's important. I think Trina, you mentioned this, and Ada, I believe you mentioned it as well, that like, it is kind of a delicate dance. And you also want to be paying attention to how you are feeling and how the other person is feeling in that conversation. And sometimes a break is good for both people. So I wanted to ask both of you as well one more question about, Trina, you talked a lot about the importance of connection, um, how powerful it is. And so, of course, there's nuance to it. Um, but I guess I got a question about, is there too much? Is there connection too often? Is there too little connection? Is it, how do you navigate connecting with a teen who maybe just doesn't want to hang out with you? Like, how do you find that balance where it maybe isn't too much and it isn't too little, and you are able to still spend time together when maybe a teen wants to do something else?
yeah, again, you're gonna want to take your cues from your teen, right? Hopefully the relationship has been built on communication and openness so that by the time those moody teenage years come, you still have an idea about how to connect with them. I really think that humor is a huge way to connect, right? Play and humor. And again, making yourself knowledgeable about what they're interested in order to find that opening, right? Is that, was there more specificity in your question? I mean, it, if we haven't gotten to a certain point in our relationship with our teens, it definitely becomes more difficult. But again, I just want to stress, if you came to your teen and said, this is so important to me, I may have been communicating with you in a way that didn't work for you up until now. Please help me understand how I can communicate with you. They have so much information and so many good ideas that we often ignore. So if we open that door and say, hey, look, I feel like I've tried A, B, and C, and it's not working, but you are so important to me. Please tell me what would work for you, right? Ask them what they need. And I think that's really important as well.
Thank you, Trina. I'm just curious, Ada, do you have any thoughts on that? If I'm not saying that you, are not wanting to hang out with your parent or something, but how do you strike a balance in terms of connecting with your parent around conversations like this, maybe? Or how might your peers, if you also want to speak more broadly?
Yeah, so if like if a child's like not really doesn't really want to, I don't know, hang out with their parent, maybe the parent could just have some brief check-ins so it doesn't have to be a long conversation. Could even just be like a few minutes, just ask some questions, ask them how they're doing, um, and just being like really understanding. And I really want to like emphasize not blaming or interrogating. I think that's like pretty much the most important point. And yeah, it doesn't have to be a long conversation if your child's kind of reluctant about it. But it's just important to show that you care and that you know where they're coming from. And you could try to set some boundaries, but not really just say, like, oh, you need to do this and you can't do this, because it might not always work for, or depending on the kid and your relationship.
Thank you, Ada. I think I loved like both of your thoughts in terms of, being curious and letting them lead. But then also, Ada, I thought it was such an interesting point or important point that like it doesn't have to be a long conversation either. You can just start to have it. It can be like a little kernel of a conversation. You can come back to it later. So thank you both for that. And I can't believe we're already at time. I wish we could keep going. I wish we could keep asking all sorts of questions of our incredible speakers. But before everyone hops off, I want to make sure to not only thank our speakers again. There were so many chats of gratitude to both of you. I hope you get a chance to scroll through and see all of the praise and thanks that you received. And I'll wrap up just with one more big thank you to both Trina Rymland and Ada Perlson for their thoughts, strategies, tips, insights tonight. I know I'm certainly walking away with a lot of incredible resources and strategies, and I believe a lot of other folks feel the same way. So thank you again. Thank you to the attendees. Thank you to everyone who joined us and spent your evening with us. And we'll look forward to seeing you at our next discussion in May.